From Los Angeles and Nashville, get ready to go behind the scenes with Entertainment Dudes. What happens when you pair a director, a voice actor in a world, and some of the most interesting people in entertainment? You're about to find out. And we're back.
Look at that guy. Oh, come on now. I feel like Marsha Brady.
Welcome to Entertainment Dudes, folks.
Yes, we're so excited to have you, as I'm excited. Again, another day to be excited. Kim says I'm excited all the time. Woo!
I don't just say it, you are. This is fact.
This is fact. Okay, I'm going to try to be unexcited. So, Brad, you're in visual effects. What does that mean?
It's so existential. It's very deep. Lots of math.
Lots of math.
Lots of
So,
math.
how'd you get your start? Like, where did you get started in visual effects? And maybe just tell us a little bit about, for people who don't know, exactly what does a visual effects artist do, and then how'd you get you started it?
So, that's a lot. So the short answer to that is, at least to start out with where I'm at in the pipeline. I'm a visual effects compositor. So the general idea is that all the things, regardless of whatever's happening in a shot or in the particular film, I'm the person that basically collects all the stuff, puts all my fingers in all the cookie jars, and then slaps it together to make something that hopefully looks pretty neat, So there's a couple different styles of, at least in the compositing from what I do. We have the invisible art, which is like you're doing cleanup work, whether it be like period cleanup, removing things that don't exist in a time period, or you're talking about like removing crew or other things that are kind of like that shouldn't be in camera but that are
Reflections, lenses in the reflection.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. It's like all the things that, like, when anybody says like, oh, they've shot that practically, no, we still touch that stuff,
Right?
So
like the Starbucks cup on the table and things like that. Right?
Yeah, somebody got yelled at for that one. It wasn't me. So so that's the invisible side of it, which is actually really fun, and I enjoy that. And then you've got the stuff that obviously it's the robots and the starfighters and like all the things that you're like, that doesn't exist in real life. So you've got a little bit of everything. So I mean, in terms of like comping, I really get to put all my hands in all the cookie jars and and play around. But in terms of getting to the start, I've always been like a movie in a comic geek. So it's like like growing up with genre and growing up with family who actually love that stuff. I mean, the bug was planted pretty early, but it wasn't until really like Iron Man, when that came out and MCU really kicked off, and I was like, oh, I should maybe go do that for the rest of my life instead of working a real adult job. So so the journey started, and it took me hopping around a couple of coasts and going through some crazy things with the school I was attending got shut down, and so then it was finding mentors and exhausting YouTube after that, and then more mentors, and just it's that little, you chip it away the goal until eventually you get in the door, and then you fight like hell to not get kicked out. So
how long would you say that process was for you, from the time that you really just started doing tutorials and learning to the time that to now? I'd say
it's been close to a decade, honestly.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah.
First 5 years were a lot of After Effects and a lot of YouTube. Just try to find that, because there are some really good schools out there, but they also don't, at least the time, they weren't allowing internet courses. It's like you had to be physically in location in the city or the state. So it exhaust what I had, and then hit that roadblock and be like, okay, reevaluate, what do I need to get from here now to there. And then eventually it led me to going to the Art Institute of Seattle and their visual effects program, which unfortunately, like I said, it shut down. That's a whole thing. You can Google about that if you want, but it was kind of a really crappy end of a situation for that. But then like all of us in the program just kind of dispersed and then went our own ways. And there's a couple of us in the industry now, and so it's been a long kind of winding road. And then I do want to give him a plug, but my mentor, Josh Parks, he works out of a company called Important Looking Pirates, but he's he's the guy that I definitely credit for allowing me to take what I knew already in comp and then transfer that specifically to Nuke, which is the standard program for what we use in terms of compositing.
How much is Nuke now? Because I know when it first came out, it was just ridiculous. Was it 30,000 or more when it first came out? It was insane.
Still stupid, considering, you know, it's powerful. It makes sense once you get into it why it is kind of the industry standard. But
I mean, that's the stuff you can move. You can remove hair from stuff. You can do blemishes. You can. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do with Nuke. Well, why use Nuke versus like After Effects? Or I'm sure you probably use both on the regular, right? I mean, do they work well together, or they play together at all? Or
no, it really depends. So so I'm just gonna broad statement. These are just my opinions. There are people that absolutely can do everything in After Effects, and you really can't tell the difference, to be honest with you. For me, it's the color space. So After Effects, when you get to your 16 gigs, it's like, or 16 bits, it really takes a power hit and slows down. So it's for me, it's like you can process more color gamut and range within Nuke, and it doesn't take the performance hit. The other side too is just, it's kind of, for me, it's I work visually, so you know, thinking about, like, you know, when you're doing anything on a computer, After Effects is all, you know, comp with a pre-comp with a pre-comp with a pre-comp with a pre-comp, and then you're just attaching things. So it's just layers, which is fine if you know what those are, but when you have to hand off a shot like we normally do to other people, as we do kind of work on a lot of each other's stuff, unless you know how to navigate that, good luck.
Be daunting.
Yeah, because it'll take you at least 2 days just to figure out what the other person did to like, wait a minute, where's this comp? What's the null? What'd they attach this to?
I used to years ago watch Andrew Kramer's videos, Video Copilot, and, and some of those simple little you know, the 2 or 3 second things that he did, you know, the project was this deep with layer and sub layer. It was amazing.
And if you look at that compared to like how Nuke operates, Nuke is just it's visual, it's nodal based. So the idea is that you have we call it a script, but you have your, you know, what your essentially your layers are, but it's like a pipe. It's like you've got a main pipe, which is a B pipe, and then just importing and putting things on top of that main pipe. And then you just build up that script till you get to the very bottom, and then kick it on.
Does it go linear side to side, or is that to do top to bottom, or
however you want?
That's
cool. There are some artists that, you know, that I've met that are more senior than me that like to make what I call spider webs, and those are a nightmare. But they're, you know, it's one of those things that, like, a lot of the more senior and the folks that have been in the industry longer, it just, for them, it's about speed and getting the thing done. The nice shift is that when I started coming into this industry, at least at this level, there was a very conscious shift to make it easier for the next person that might have to touch your thing. So it becomes like more like, hey, yes, speed is important. You want to hit deadlines, you want to get stuff out quickly as you can, but also, like, you know, think about the next guy. Like, if somebody has to go into it, whether it be your soup or another artist, if you have to hand off a shot, it's so much easier, like, if things do make sense in some kind of a form or fashion. But I mean, we're still like using elements in multiple ways. It's just, how do you organize it to make it kind of more user friendly? But the other difference too is just under the hood is that After Effects, and again, I don't mean to knock After Effects, so because don't send me hate mail, because people will burn stuff and throw it at me.
I know there are people they love After Effects.
They love their After Effects.
Yeah,
and I do use it for motion graphics, but I don't use it for comp. But it's also, for me, it's just it's not as user friendly overall as the program, but with under the hood, it gives you a lot of stuff automatically. So it kind of like, I think it's more meant for users and artists that maybe don't live in the more math side of things. But Nuke, the beautiful thing about it, and also the pain in the ass, it didn't give you anything. Like, it will literally sit there just stupid until you tell it to do something. So Nuke forces you to really learn, like, you know, what is a pre-mold? You know, when you're merging something on top of it, what do those operations really do mathematically? And that kind of allows you to become a better compositor, at least in this, you know, my world of this. because you can do, I mean, the amount of algebra that I use on a daily basis is stupid. And, I don't want to ever admit that to my former algebra teacher who, repeatedly said, I'm never going to use this in my life. And
they'd be like,
and, and it's traumatic and I don't want to relive it. But, yeah, so, I mean, it really is a thing that like,
well, when you get your Oscar, now you know what to say. Like, I'd like to thank my algebra teacher who made this Oscar possible.
Yeah, I'll never admit that publicly. So, I might buy him
Too late.
Yeah, I'll buy him a beer one day and be like, you know why you're getting this. So.
Yes, but if I drink half of this and half of it is left and 2/3 of it drops onto the ground and half of that falls to the floor, how much beer do you have left?
Like, I don't know, but you're a sad human being at that point.
Because you have no beer. You get no beer.
No beer.
I would just be like,
yeah, there's nothing to cry into at that point. No beer for you.
So, but yeah, so I mean, that's at least, getting back to the thing, that's kind of like between the two big, the systems that we use. But I mean, there are, teams and offices that do, jump back and forth between both, but it really just, it's like anything else. It's like a tool. You just got to figure out, do I really need to use this or can I get around it? But I mean, they can kind of play nice. It also depends on the task of what you're trying to do. So and again, it comes down to like the math and how you're incorporating all that stuff. But
yeah,
let's take a look at a video reel first, and we'll just go through the whole reel, and then we can continue talking and maybe analyze some parts of the reel, and let's just show people a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So, and I apologize, but also you're welcome for not having sound on, because
okay,
I'm terrible with sound. It would just be like,
we can talk over this a little bit. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so this is a collection of my work from Frame Store and Crafty Apes, where I'm currently employed. So a lot of these shots, I interchanged them just in terms of kind of, timeline, because obviously some projects have been out a little bit longer than not, but, things like this, for this example, this is an example of like really good invisible effects.
Okay.
All that grass is brown.
Ah.
So the directive is make the grass green.
Jeez.
So it's like you have to go through there. It's a combination of like using keys and things like that to create that effect. And yeah, so it's like, I mean, this was another shot that it's basically, actually these ones are more fun. So this is a fun one to talk about because they had practical makeup on the actors, but it wasn't really great. And it was like there were seams everywhere. And so like the task on those ones was to basically digitally age up those actors for the duration of the movie.
Yeah.
This is like, kind of superhero standard effects. This is a Disney Plus show. More kind of cleanup work and kind of, trickery stuff.
Cool.
Set extensions, crowd integrations, blue screen, This shot is actually really fun. This is one of the first shots I got at Frame Store. And basically it's period cleanup, because I mean the Apollo, it's modern and you can go to it in Harlem.
Right. Yeah, and you could see the Whole Foods is not that far from it on the right there.
Exactly. But like all of those plaques on the bottom have names on them. And so I had to remove the names on all of those plaques for the duration of the shot.
Wow.
So in like this particular shot, we had 3 other artists working on different areas of cleanup. So like somebody was having to remove like handicap placards and handicap buttons. Other people were removing signage and, posters and a good chunk of modern skyline and replacing that with set extensions. And but yeah, so this one was a lot of time put in, but the technique actually isn't really terribly hard. It's just all the amount of roto that you have to do on top of after you get the technique and the stuff wiped out.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so again, it's like that invisible stuff that if you're looking at it, this was actually some horror removal. Like they had a practical bullet hole. And so like it needed to be a thing of like, you can't see the bullet hole until he's
shot.
Right, yeah. Right.
But yeah, but it was jarring because you see it and it's that practical dot on his head. But like, yeah, but when it played in the show, like you see Pacino and like he pops out a gun. Next thing you know, it's like, it looks like homeboy's got capped in the head. So, but
Here,
yeah.
I can just add this.
Very cool.
I want to see the, here we go.
There we go. So now I figured out we both, Brad, have a bacon number of 0 because I've done voice work for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So yeah. So you've done the VFX. So hey, cool.
I like
we share a credit.
I'll take it. Hey, we got Emmy nods for that. So that's, there you go.
So
that's awesome.
what here was this the same thing? Green in the background?
So no, this one actually was really tricky. So this shot, when they did it practically, it wasn't stabilized. And so what they did was they had this push in that was kind of like all over the place.
Oh, really?
So the directive on this one is to stabilize the shot to make it actually a smooth kind of a push in. But what happens is that because of the nature of where the pixels are moving, things start getting squished and pushed in and shoved in different ways. So for this one, what I had to do was I had to separate the background and the foreground and then do a set extension, which is basically like another version of like matte painting to basically fill in the chunks that no longer were actually there, because once I cut out that tree branch or that big log they're sitting on and all of those plants, you basically cut that thing out and then you just figure out where the holes are from what used to be covering that. And then you're just creating those patches and then tracking those patches into place with the background.
So you didn't even have a blank plate that they said you created it from scratch.
Yeah, I had to do this from scratch. So this one, this got a little gnarly, to be honest with you. Like it would have been great if we had some kind of a clean plate, but at the same time, with the way the camera's moving and the way that things were kind of shifting around, there was enough movement happening to where you couldn't have just gotten away with just a single still image.
Wow.
But yeah, so it was rebuilding a lot of that. And then if you go back to it on this far screen left, all of that old kind of like the old man's beard.
Yeah.
That had to get rebuilt too. So like everything that's touching that foreground that's shifting, anything behind it was all had to get replaced out.
Wow. That's crazy. So of all the tools that you use, which do you think has the best image stabilization?
Actually, this is where After Effects actually doesn't suck on that. But it does a pretty good job. But the problem is that when you think about it, like corner pinning is a kind of a normal thing where you're picking your stuff. But when you're stabilizing something, I mean, it's always better to get it. The better off in camera you can get it, the easier it's going to be on the back end.
Hear that, filmmakers?
If you can,
don't just fix it in post. Fix it in camera if you can.
I will throw a shoe at somebody. Fix it in post.
Kill them.
The more you can fix it on set, like the better off. Because what's going to happen is that when you stabilize something, like within Nuke, and we use another also program called Mocha, which is a planar tracker program and really, really powerful. But you figure like it's basically taking a section and then stabilizing that section, and everything around that is shifting around. So that's where it's like when you have different planes moving in different ways, that's where it gets really tricky. Like
that parallax.
It kind of starts looking like those helmet mounted cams where you've got the head in the center and everything else is going kind of crazy.
Yeah. So Mocha's also, that's in After Effects and in it's a plugin for both, right? You can use that in Nuke.
Yeah, so it's a separate company. They just have a deal worked out with After Effects. So if you get After Effects, you have access to Mocha.
Yeah, Mocha works. I've used Mocha tracking in After Effects. It's incredible especially for sign like removing signs and stuff. I think it's really good at that and some stabilization.
Yeah, and the company's called Boris VFX or Boris FX. They do a lot of great tutorials, and like their education department is fantastic because there's a gal, her name's Mary Poplin. She does weekly like meetups online, and it's just troubleshooting shots. So they use a variety of programs to kind of go through that, because the Boris FX, like their program depth is really, really great, because they can handle pretty much anything on any pipe of the post pipeline.
And whenever you actually use that plugin, just go ahead and accept all future changes, because they update their plugins all the time. And every single time you log in, it'll say, "Would you like to update your plugin?" Yes. Just update all my plugins.
Yes. But yeah, no, they are fantastic. So it's industry standard. I mean, I pretty much live in Mocha for all my tracking, and even Roto. I know they have another program that's more kind of like Roto specific, but like, Mocha at this point is kind of like, if you work at a company, you've got to probably have access to it. So it's
are you going frame by frame in Nuke, right? Or you know how I know in After Effects you could do the forward backward, set the endpoint, you can color and trace the person plus minus, and then it kind of does a rough in, you know, it's going to get off, you know, and then you have to go clean it up. Is it essentially the same deal?
Basically, yeah, it depends on, so like Nuke handles things differently than Mocha does. So like with Nuke, when you create a shape, again, it defaults back to that I don't know what to do until you tell me.
Right.
Whereas the math behind Mocha, what it's doing is that it's a planar tracker, but it's also tracking textures and shape. So, you know, if you go to like, this is where animation principles come in really handy, is that, you know, like what you were just talking about, if you have a start pose and then an end pose, wherever like this, you know, this position of from here to here, you can start here and then do your next shape over there. And Mocha will actually track that, you know, with your scale and rotation and everything else. Whereas Nuke, you might have to go in and manually manipulate it a little bit more. But yeah, Mocha, it will save you so much time if you get in there and start learning how to roto. But it's also like, because everything we do in comp is all about edges. So that's partly also the other reason is that Mocha just, the way that it's viewing an image under the hood is just so much more powerful and more like depth than what a standard just like a Nuke would. So Nuke's trackers aren't terrible, but you know, it's just Mocha just has a better product on that end of it at this point.
Yeah. So do you find that a particular cameras are a little harder to rotoscope out, like Red versus Arri? Because I know Arri has a soft, like, especially the lenses as a soft roll off. Does it matter? Do you notice it all?
So yes and no. It depends on how you're setting up at that point. So if you're talking about like anamorphic footage versus, you know, like more of like your standard kind of like cinema frames, if you're doing anything that you're trying to do on it, you want to kind of flatten things out. So if you're starting to get those super wide, you know, like the 16s or whatever, and you start to get that kind of the fisheye, you want to flatten that out as much as you can, because that way, once you get that, all of whatever you're doing, whether it be roto or cleanup work, things like that, once you have that, it's a better track, and then you can invert it, and then it matches the lens.
Yeah,
it's just it's a much more cleaner effect versus trying to do something that might be a little bit wonky or a little bit off.
Yep.
But I mean, it just, again, it depends on, like, every shot is different, and so every task that you're trying to do on it, it's kind of like a unique thing that not necessarily every hack is going to work every time. But
how much of what you do would you say in your field is planned ahead of time versus it's just the way that it came together and you have to try to fix something? Or like, what percentage of would you say was?
I'd say it's probably, that's a good one to quantify, because I mean, you know, in every comper, I think behind a box will just be like, you know, it's that inevitable, like, why the hell did they do this? You know, how did this happen?
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing that I'm learning is, because I am now dipping into the on-set world, is that I, you know, get to go play as a VFX soup every now and then. And, now I answer that question as to, you know, now I can go, oh, that's why that happened. Yeah.
No, because you see it there when it's well. See, a lot of the times filmmakers, they don't know, if you don't know the post-production process as an editor, making decisions as a director about how you want to cut, it's harder. So I think the same thing goes with visual effects, because it's sort of a different beast and you have to spend a lot of time in it, understanding exactly what it does. I think some of the best directors who work in that kind of visual effects are also themselves have been visual effects artists, so they understand it. So you get a lot of productions where you have a director who's just getting into the stuff. And if you don't have somebody there that's kind of helping set up the shots and doing some previs going through it, I'm sure that you're going to be fixing a lot more of their stuff than you are of somebody who's been doing it for a long time. But yeah, I love having the previs. I think is super important. And especially if I'm doing visual effects, I always love to talk to my visual effects guy before I even do anything. Like, here's what I want to do with the shot. This is what I want to try to accomplish in this. What are my options? Like, and there's not one right way to do it. It's like, okay, you have 3 or 4 different options. You can do green screen, you can blue screen, we can roto it out, you could do a tighter shot. So, you know, or we cut to multiple cameras. How much of this can you cheat in camera with your edit versus how much do you have to do in post? So I think having that visual effects supervisor with you before you even start shooting, especially if you can be on set, is like an absolute must, you know, and it's not like you're going to pay that much more. So if I'm doing a commercial and I know there's going to be visual effects, and I'm already spending, you know, 150, 200,000 on it, adding visual effects there the day is going to save me a buttload of money. And I think in the back end.
Yeah, well, you think about it like this too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a business, right? So, like, you know, you have a budget, you have to answer to people, you know, especially the money people. So it's like part of the thing with being an on-set soup, and that you know I learned pretty quick, was that you also want to try to save the production money. So it's finding that balance of like when post is the answer versus like, oh no, let's take a beat, you know, let's talk about it, and then come up with a different solution that we might be able to get in camera and actually save some money and save some time.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just, you know, it's that communication of like, you know, blending the practical and then also with what we're doing. And because really we should be like, I mean, we do fix a lot of messes, things like that, but you know, we should be like enhancing things. So for our end of it, you know, it's very much not that everything fix it in post. I mean, because yes, we can do anything, but you're talking like your budget and like how much you really want to spend to accomplish things that could have been a conversation and like, you know, a 5-10 minute thing versus like, you know, like you didn't say anything or you didn't do the thing, and then either you don't make the day on the shoot, and then it's like it falls to post and things like that, where now you're having to do bids and budgets, and you know it can be really costly to not have that at. So it's, you know, and I'm finding out too that every director, they work differently. It's like any other position. It's like some directors love VFX soups. Some people like don't want to deal with them at all. Some people just don't like visual effects because they don't understand it. So part of where I am coming from in this newer generation of folks learning this role is that I want to kind of demystify that stuff, because it's like I get the fact that yeah, we got the curtain and we're behind it and we got to do all, you know, the really cool shit, but it's like anything else. Like if you're on set and you're working as a team and you know what that person is capable of and can do, it's going to make the day go a lot quicker, and then you can also troubleshoot with that person. So it really is more beneficial, I feel like, to be more transparent about, you know, what we do on the back end of it. Because even just like, I mean, the simple stuff like the invisible effects, you know, I mean, even stuff that like, you know, like removing these posters from behind me, you know, that could be a set deck thing. So somebody actually physically does it on set. But, you know, say you get in the edit and the director is like, you know, that's garbage, or, you know, that's copyrighted. We can't, you know, they can't use my Yankee hat because we don't have the rights for it. All of that stuff comes into play. And so it really is, you know, it helps the process along the more that you actually get to be in the mix.
Right.
And that involves, you know, like Jason said, like being in the meetings. So it's like even before you get to a tech scout or on, you know, the actual day of shoot, you're in those meetings with everybody going through, like, you know, you're reading through the scene and the script, you know, you're seeing like, okay, this is going to be this might need this might need that. But yeah, so the earlier you can get the visual effects people on board just to kind of help guide that process, you're going to save time, hopefully, and save some of the budget.
I found that something has worked for me as a director is just, I think in terms of assets, like just talking about with my visual effects team, I want to shoot this, you know, music video at a rainforest I shot in Griffith Park. And the lady's like, I want a rainforest and I want to be dressed in vines and I want butterflies. And I'm like, we're shooting in California in Griffith Park. It's brown. It's a desert. She's like, I don't care. I want rain and I want you know, so I'm talking to visual effects. I'm like, okay, I want to shoot this. Here's my plate. And, you know, and I go out and shoot some plates of the area. And I say, what do I need? I need a rainforest. And he said, you know, these assets can be real and we can generate these. So how about you give me this, I need these assets if you can give me these. So it's either that way. I like that in terms of I'm delivering certain assets. Like at the end of a production, when I deliver my assets for television or for whatever, I know I'm delivering A, B, C, D, E, F to visual effects, to music, to this. Same thing for me works on the front end. Like I need these assets and these plates in order to do this well. And I like that process. And to me, that's even just having that conversation like you or I were talking right now, here's what I want to do. It was a 10-15 minute conversation and he gave me 3 or 4 different options. I picked this option because I knew our budget was, and then I gave him assets and then he built the rest of them that we needed. So I like that process. And for any of those pieces, if I'm going to have any visual effects and someone's going to work on it, at least have 1 or 2 meetings ahead of time to talk about what that's going to look like. So, and and I think it's just sometimes to me it just seems lazy. Like I don't want. I've got other thing. I don't. I'll figure it out later. I don't want to mess with that.
Well, and again, it's like how much do you want to spend at the end of the day? Because I mean, that's what it's going to come down to. Is that if you don't, it's like anything else in life. If you don't dress it, in a semi-timely manner, it's going to bite you in the ass at some point. And for us, that's usually like, okay, well, we could do that, but now you just wasted half your budget on a shot that could have been done the day of.
Right.
And it might not even be that important of a shot too. So you're just like, it was really just a transitional shot to get me from A to Z. And now it's like, that's how much money for that? You're like, exactly. Oh gosh.
I know there was, like my first solo on set soup gig, just that one I wrapped up a couple of months ago. And it very much is that things, even from like on set to when we were doing reshoots and now into post, I mean, things that we talked about and had agreed to, like, okay, we don't need to do that. The studio comes back and they say, "Oh, we actually do want that now." So it's like, and so it's then it's my the team of artists going like, "Why didn't Brad do that on set?" And then I'm just like,
You're like, "I did it. I told you.
Like, we talked about it. No, we agreed not to, but now it's a thing." And so it, you're trying to get as much data and all the reference stuff as you can, also to hopefully, when that does happen, to try to limit how that impacts the team on the post side of it. So, but I mean, it's fun. I mean, it really is. It's a neat environment, and to be able to go out and do that, like, I mean, we're making magic every day, so it's pretty awesome.
Man, all right. We're already coming up on almost actually a little over a half hour for this first episode. Yes, wow. Brad, thanks so much for joining us today for this part 1 of your episode on Entertainment Dudes. So next week we'll be picking up where we left off, and we're going to be checking out a little bit more of your reel. We're going to find out a little bit more about the visual effects and the projects that you've got coming up and what you've been working on. So for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, like and subscribe. Thank you for joining Entertainment Dudes, and we'll catch you. Yes, it's That's down here.
Hey, Brad. Where can people that want to look at some more of your work before part 2 comes up, where can they find you?
Yeah, easiest place to find me is on my website, www.bradallenmoon.com, BRADALLEN moon.com.
Okay.
It's got all my art stuff on there. Visual effects is like the first page, but then if you want to see my photography and paintings, things like that, those are
wonderful.
Well, so
awesome.
Well, this has been Entertainment Dudes. We'll catch you next week.
Entertainment Dudes.